I'd like to call the October 7th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Can I get tonight on the agenda, we have one information report, two correspondence items, two site development plan recommendation reports, and two other items. Can I get a roll call of commission members, please?
Commissioner Boren,
Here.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Here.
Commissioner Cohn,
Here.
Commissioner Clayton,
Here.
Commissioner Depler is in Zoom in a second. Commissioner Jackson,
Here.
Commissioner Rubis, Chair Beatty,
Here.
Councilmember Brost,
Here.
and Mayor Garitano.
Thank you. We've got three sets of minutes to approve. So can I get a approval of the minutes from our August 26th work session, I believe? Motion by Commissioner Cohn, seconded by Commissioner Clayton. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And I think I was not at that meeting, so I will abstain. The August 26th one. All right, and then let's see, yeah, there's site plan and then the regular meeting. All right, can I get a motion for the approval of the site plan meeting and on September 3rd, please? Oh.
Site plan.
Yeah, site plan first. Yeah. All right, motion by Commissioner Rubis, second by Commissioner Clayton. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. And now motion for the approval of the regular minutes from September 3rd. Motion by Councilman Brost, second by Commissioner Helfrey. Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain?
I'll abstain.
All right, motion passes, one abstention. Thank you. All right, does the Department of Planning have any opening comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, we held an event here this afternoon. We had some cookies that were left over. So I offer them to you as commission members and anybody in attendance as well. I am using the mic. Again, we have some cookies, we have coffee and water, so help yourself, and that extends to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's see here. Now will be the public comment session. Let's see here. As a reminder, 3-minute time limit, correct? And unless you're representing a group, and then it's 5 minutes. And Travis will take your cards if you have any comments. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, the first speaker card is from Mr. Peterson.
Thanks, Travis. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, my name is Dennis Peterson, and I am here with my daughter, Charlotte, and I am the owner of the yellow house in front of Sandalwood Creek condominiums. Anybody that's ever driven by probably remembers my Halloween decorations or Christmas decorations, and we are directly across the street from the new proposed Brightleaf expansion. Now, I wrote a script. I do better shooting off the hip, but Travis was really informative. And I really am appreciative of that. I came in with one agenda thinking maybe I could stop it from happening. I was never wanting to stop it from happening. I really embrace my neighbors. There's one here who I stop and talk to almost daily from the expansions of Brightleaf. You know, I dealt with the 3 years of construction. I welcome change. I understand there's a shortage of houses in where we live, and there's a need for mixed use. There's a lot of what you're doing is the right thing. But I just don't see enough in any way in ways of mitigation for noise and for dust and for, you know, those diminishing 3 years that you guys are asking me and my family to go through, and the residents of Sandalwood Creek, which, you know, my partner has moved from one home in that neighborhood to a condo in the direct Sandalwood Creek condominiums. I know it's odd. My partner lives directly behind me in a condo, but so I can see it from both sides. The noise is unbearable in the house that she lived in, the house that I live in, and the condo that she has moved into. We're talking about 3 different levels of insulation, 3 different home construction types, 3 different yards. Topography is all different. I've done everything I can with fencing, with bushes, with improvements of my own to try to mitigate this in a way that makes it bearable to live there. And I'm talking from 5 a.m., people leaving for work. That's when the trucks with their air brakes hauling something from Chesterfield bear through to Eureka and construction sites. And I get it, but we can do better. I mean, I've lived here a good portion of my adult life. I've seen what they did in Clayton and Ladue when they expanded Highway 40 with those noise fences. That was directly requested by the citizens there, as a preventative measure for all the noise and the disruption that was going to cause. And that was the only way that got approved. I'm just asking you guys to take into consideration the lower income portion of the beautiful city that we live in and participate in and love and talk great about whenever we travel. We live in Wildwood. It's a great, I've raised 5 daughters here, one of which is a teacher at Fairway Elementary. They went to Eureka, which kind of stinks. Something else I could complain about later is I hate that we send 60% of Eureka high school students to Eureka. But I think we could do better with our police. I think I've offered my yard for enforcement. The speed has to slow down on Taylor Old Etherton Road. I can't even use my front yard. And I'm just asking for some consideration on what can we do to make sure that this construction site doesn't just impact the lower portion of income, to benefit the new ones coming in that don't recognize what the city's always been. That's all.
Thank
And
you
I
for your
appreciate it.
comments.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Ms. Bryan.
Good evening. This is the Atherton Heights proposal
Name
I'm
and
speaking on.
address, please.
Sorry, Sandra Bryan, Ward 8. Atherton Heights is a proposal for a cul-de-sac. Studies have shown fatal crashes are 270% more likely in newer cul-de-sacs compared to traditional neighborhoods. The cul-de-sac is a suburban trap. It's virtually useless as a road. It doesn't support public transport, cycles, or walking. It's literally, in translation in French, meaning is bottom of the sack. Developers favor cul-de-sacs because they require 50% less road costs, fewer pipes, street lights, and footpaths. Atherton Road already has all those issues. This is not progress. We are going backwards. I just had a swale put in where the project calls for 3 houses to be built next to it. The project calls for 3 houses next to the swale I had put in. Not, and the other 6 houses, that are across the field on 3 acres. I don't care if you build a moat around these houses. I will be affected by more rain runoff if this plan goes through. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. I spent $16,000 this year to divert the rain runoff. This solved my water issues. Developers spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on small rural plots and expecting zoning to change has got to stop. We need to send a message to these builders that they will not be favored in our community. I would hope council physically looks at these properties. If you're not going to locations to see clearly the properties, we have a problem. This should be mandatory for all council members to see locations in person before voting. I'm inviting all of you to meet me there. I would be happy to show you in person. I work nights. I'm available all week long. While you are looking at the properties, ask yourself, would you want this next to your home? Remember, it is our opinion that matters, council. To have an opinion on why something is a good idea is not welcome with the community. Your job description is to uphold the rights and opinions of the public. I was appalled to hear of the project going in across from the middle school on Old Manchester Road. That is a 2-lane road and an accident waiting to happen also. It's like everyone turns a blind eye on the road problems and favor developers. Obviously, potential developers got the memo. Wildwood City Hall is in favor of these crazy proposals. The water pressure issues on Canberry and surrounding homes is not being addressed. TB is trying to push their agenda through without that problem being solved. Seriously, we are not progressing in Wildwood. Whose fault is that? Builders need to start spending millions on properties away from the established communities. By letting them get their way, we are not progressing. This has got to stop, and when you start seeing it that way, we will have progress, not more problems. This is a crucial turning point for the future of Wildwood. Don't let us down. And remember, progress will only happen if we send a message to the builders. They need to move to a larger undeveloped
Is that-
area. Thank you for your time.
Sorry, your hand signal confused me. No, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to Joe.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. DeGents.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Chris DeGants. I'm representing Fisher and Fritchell Custom Homes, 695 Trade Center Boulevard, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63005. This is in regards to PZ 262728 of 23, the point at Brightleaf. Tonight, we're asking you to reaffirm your past approval for the point at Brightleaf. Yes, we're requesting you to approve something that you've already approved. Earlier this year, the commission approved the recommendation report to the city council for the point at Brightleaf. The city council supported the project as well. However, at its second reading of the ordinance, concerns regarding screening and privacy on 4 specific lots resulted in the number of allowable homes to be reduced from the 34 that you recommended and approved down to 30 homes in its final ordinance. This change by the council at its final action did not provide us as the applicant opportunity or ability to propose modifications or other methods to properly address the concerns being raised. Therefore, we're requesting to amend the ordinance at this point and allow us opportunity to address the screening of those particular lots. Our proposal tonight is to return it to its original 34 single-family dwellings as proposed. It is consistent with what you already approved in every way. However, as added consideration, we are proposing additional landscape buffering within key areas of the project and specifically adjoining the 4 lots identified by the council to address the privacy and buffering concerns they raised. The inclusion of these 4 homes is essential for the project to move forward, given there are many other numerous high-quality improvements that were called for in the final ordinance, and specifically the extension of the Taylor Road landscape and streetscape improvements for the entirety of our project, but also off-site, and other key items to address the extension of this project as a part of the Brightleaf project. Staff has provided you a detailed report recommending the approval of this, the original 34 units, and we're in complete agreement with the latest staff report. We are requesting your reconsideration of this additional information and its favorable recommendation onto City Council. We are here and available for questions when this item comes up in tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Doster.
Thank you, Travis. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Mike Doster. I'm the Land Use Counsel to the petitioner, and I'm really just here to answer questions. As you probably already know, we're proceeding under Municipal Code Provision 415.510, and we're seeking the amendment that Chris just described. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them if I can.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Collins.
Good evening, Steve Collins, Orchard Village. I will I didn't realize when I signed up to speak that you had actually attached my written comments to the back of the agenda or the meeting information, but I'll continue to speak and be brief. But I just want to highlight the 2 points I made in that recent commentary. I realize that this is a done deal. It sure sounds like it is. And so I'm not going to try to reiterate the objections we had to the entirety of the thing. But I will say that, first of all, I have not seen any kind of a plan that shows where those 4 homes were located that the council removed. What I assumed, maybe incorrectly, that they were the 4 homes that I had flagged in one of my written commentaries because of their proximity or impingement upon the easements that'll be required by the current underground pipeline that runs along 100 and the power line that runs across the west end of that property. So were 4 homes there. I had flagged those. I assumed those were the 4 that had been removed. I don't know. I see that this current plan tonight, I just now saw that they've added some screening trees and that sort of thing, but it looks to me like they put those trees in the easement areas. I've lived near an underground pipeline before, and that was a 20-foot from the pipeline, both directions, that was required to be clear so they can maintain the pipeline. I'm not sure about the power line, but it looks to me like they got trees underneath that power line. And you know what that looks like when you go down Manchester Road, where they have to butcher the trees to make it work under a power line. So that's one item. I think that there's really no reason to add those back in because those utility services have not been moved, have not changed. So if that was the reason, if it was strictly screening, then again, I've already commented on that. The other one has to do with traffic, and it's already been brought up once. This new area will have 3 entrances onto Taylor. Okay, Taylor already has a problem as far as traffic, where that particular area where this is being built is a speed zone. The police have recently been sitting on Fireglow at one of the entrances recently, and we definitely appreciate them doing that. But people come in, particularly from the west or whatever that is, off of 109, and they come up there pretty fast, and there are no speed humps, no anything there. So I would certainly ask what is being planned in that regard. Was a traffic study done that's going to show that the sight distances going both directions from that area are very limited? Already, Orchard Village has that problem, particularly if you're trying to turn left to go east on Taylor out of at least the west or the far exit from Orchard Village. But this new area will end up with a limited sight distance both directions. And with 3 entrances.
That's your 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm hoping that a traffic plan has been done, and I haven't seen any evidence of that.
All right. Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Pidcock.
Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Chuck Pidcock. I'm a resident of Brightleaf, Orchard Village in particular. Our question is probably 2.5 years old. Joe Vucic has been there. We have a water problem, standing water. We have 5 houses on the west side of the Fireglow Drive. We back up to a quote, well, it was common ground now. Anyway, to make a long story short, hopefully Mr. Vucic, Chris, and another representative from F&F stood in my backyard and said, this problem will be solved before they leave. Still there. We have water standing right now. I have water standing in the yard. It's time, I think maybe we should all look at giving the contractors an edge and saying Wildwood wants them to keep their promises. We've had a contractor look at it, about $3,500 for French drains. We don't want to spend the money ourselves because we were promised that it wouldn't be there. The drawings don't show it there. Getting older and older by the day. I am sure there's some escrow left. $3,500 seems reasonable. Promises are not kept. Public health problem, mosquitoes. You walk out in the yard right now in the back. Kind of kick a little bit. Up come the mosquitoes. I don't know where to go with it. Build a dam back there, and maybe, I don't know. Anyway, thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Ms. Link.
Hello, Lynn Link, Indian Ridge, Ward 6. Wildwood has a beautifully unique history, and undoubtedly our incorporation has helped to preserve much of that. Over 100 years ago, Wildwood was deforested, scarred from mining, and the air and streams were polluted with lead, nickel, asbestos, cadmium, and dioxin-furans from the smokestacks of lime, brick, and clay factories. Thanks to the benevolence of those in the past, we now have more public lands within our borders than any other municipality in the county, which requires protection from nearby development. Wildwood has a more recent history of adjacent and upstream surface soil contaminants injuring and even killing residents. I've spoken to a local resident who's seriously ill. After purchasing their home, she found out that there were toxic chemicals on her property, and that prior to their purchase, complaints had been made to the city. Missouri's geological history of limestone makes us one of the highest states for incidents of quick opening cover collapse sinkholes. Having multiple lime mining and manufacturers in operation for over a century is further evidence of the amount of limestone Wildwood has. Development turning permeable into non-permeable surface increases the chance of sinkholes opening up. The USGS map shows multiple known sinkholes in Wildwood. However, they do not show the massive sinkhole that drained the 23-acre Lake Chesterfield in less than 3 days in 2004, or the 20-foot and 40-foot deep sinkhole that opened up in 2014 off Melrose. Other sinkholes are now opening up after new construction, even in the 3-acre density areas after new homes were built. Despite retention ponds, which increase the risk of mosquito-borne illnesses, there are complaints of erosion now in bright leaf subdivisions. These are clear signs that existing regulations, if followed, still fall short of protecting the property owners and the environment. Because of our past history, this community or this commission and the city council should have a higher standard of care. Requiring pre-development EPA certified soil testing for contaminants should be the minimum standard to protect our citizen. With regard to the Etherton Heights development, many of the nearby and adjacent homes, which are highest at risk from being adversely affected by the Etherton and Latitude developments, are already on the city's historic preservation survey, and some of them are even on the historic register. Their history tells the story of the rise and fall of Route 66. Erosion from newer developments and runoff is already a problem on many of these properties. Kirkwood and Webster maintain their historic aesthetics by ensuring that new development does not adversely affect and blends in with historic homes. If Wildwood is going to compete for state and federal funds for historic Route 66 preservation, they're going to have to actually show that they put more effort into protecting this history than just a piece of paper. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next and final speaker, if no one raises their hand on Zoom, is Mr. DeHart.
Len DeHart, 2377 Assenford Road. I just want to say that as development continues to, seems like it's pushing westward again, that it's been understood for many years that residential homes west of 109 would only be on 3-acre lots, 3 acres or more. If, you know, I mean, and we need to stick with that because it's becoming very, very populated, and the traffic now is, I've been out here for almost 70 years. The traffic is immense. I mean, there's in the mornings and the afternoons. And, you know, I live off of Highway T, and if you're on 100 going past T, it's hard to get out onto 100. But please just keep in mind that anything west of 109 should be 3 acres or more. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, that was the final speaker card in the room, and I do not see any hands raised on Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Let's see here. So first item on the agenda, PZ 4-24, Mr. Newberry.
PZ 4-24, Etherton Heights, care of Spree Seduta Properties LLC, 629 Langton Drive, St. Louis, Missouri, 63105. A request for a change in zoning upon a tract of land that is 3 acres in size, being located on the east side of Etherton Road, north of its intersection with Manchester Road. Street address 2522 Etherton Road, St. Louis County, locator number 24V530560. Which is currently zoned NU non-urban residence district, town center neighborhood edge, and neighborhood general districts to the R4 7,500 square foot residence district with a planned residential development overlay district. Proposed use, a total of 9 single-family dwellings with street improvements, common ground areas, and required public space areas, dedications, and improvements. Ward 8.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Grunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight its report with recommendation regarding this requested rezoning and application of the overlay district. In that report, the department starts by providing information relating to the proposals themselves and the property that is associated with the proposals. Key amongst the items identified is that this particular 3-acre site is located in the town center. And as part of being town center, the property has 2 regulating plan land use designations. Along the frontage, that being Etherton Road, it is neighborhood general district. And to the rear or to the east on the property is the neighborhood edge district designation. Both of those land use designations are not zoning districts. They are land use categories, and they are used by the Department of Planning, along with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and finally City Council, to identify permitted uses and associated densities. The neighborhood general district designation is one that allows for live-work units, commercial component, multiple family units, and now, after the update of the plan in 2018, single-family detached units. The neighborhood edge district designation is truly just a single-family detached dwellings on individual lots. The mixed district designation is often addressed by the design that is submitted in conjunction with the rezoning, in this case from the NU non-urban resident district to the R3 10,000 square foot resident district with the overlay district, the PRD as it is called. In this case, the neighborhood edge district designation is the one that applies to the design that's being presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration. I would note that prior to the public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, which occurred on September 3rd, this particular proposal was submitted to the city's Development and Zoning Review Committee on multiple occasions. Over the course of time, there has been discussion about a 12-lot plan. A 12-lot plan was presented to the Development and Zoning Review Committee, and that committee, for all intents and purposes, rejected it because of the density associated with it and the overall design to make that density was not consistent with the town center plan. Ultimately, what was submitted for consideration was a 9-lot plan. And that 9-lot plan is on your monitors and behind you being projected on the wall. That particular plan, the department does not support. Again, from its perspective, that being the department, the density is still too substantial. And concerns raised by the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as the public at public hearing, only further reinforced the department's concern about a 9-lot plan. Those concerns related to stormwater runoff, parking concerns, lack of usable public space, and several others. So tonight, the department is presenting for consideration a recommendation for 7 lots on the 3-acre tract of land. Along with the reduction in the density, the department is also recommending that the lots that ultimately would abut Etherton Road, those dwellings to be placed on it would have to face Etherton Road, meaning the front elevation would face the street. I think what you'll see is if you ride up Etherton Road or down Etherton Road, the homes that are located along it, whether they're existing and older or newer, part of Canberry or Main Street Crossing, all front out to the street. And I think that's a critical component for the purposes of this recommendation. To accommodate that reorientation of the 2 home sites, that is part of the reason for the reduction in density. Also, those 2 single-family dwellings on those 2 lots would have to have side entry garages. Again, no garage facing the primary street, in this case, Etherton Road. I do feel it is important to note that the development also will be required to meet all of the stormwater requirements of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District and the City of Wildwood. There is a basin shown in the southeast corner of the proposed development. That basin will be reviewed from the perspective of both that district and the city. The department does have some concerns relating to that, and certainly echoes what Ms. Bryan has said. New development shouldn't impact negatively existing homes and their lots. So in the recommendation report, the conditions, there is a long list of requirements relating to stormwater management. The department also notes that the plan did not show any improvements to Etherton Road, whether vehicular or pedestrian. They are now shown as a requirement. There is no public space, usable public space identified. That is now shown in the conditions and required. In all, there are a number of requirements relating to the design standards and architectural guidelines of the city relative to town center. The intent is to create a quality product relative to materials, high standards, as well as those that meet the requirements relative to front porches, setbacks relative to the front porches, garage location, and others. All in all, the department's recommendation is somewhat different than what was presented both at public hearing and to the Development and Zoning Review Committee in terms of density, the units themselves, and certainly orientation of at least 2 of the home sites relative to Etherton Road. Therefore, tonight we do have a favorable recommendation report for you, but for 7 lots only, not 9 in total, and a long list of conditions that would be required to be met. And with that, the department will conclude its presentation and accept any comments or questions regarding this particular matter. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Any discussion?
I have a question, Mr. Vunich. Do we have a drawing of how the plat will be changed from 9 to 7 lots? I only see one with 9 lots on it.
There is the proposal that came to public hearing has 9 lots on it. The 7-lot plan, again, there was a email from the engineer of record working for the petitioner that noted they would not have time to prepare a 7-lot plan. From the perspective of the department, it typically doesn't require a plan of this nature. until the commission provides direction. You may not agree with with the 7-lot recommendation and prefer 9 lots, or you may feel 7 lots is still too dense. So typically what would happen is the commission would make a recommendation relative to the report before you tonight. Then the petitioner has up to 4 weeks time frame between meetings of the Planning and Zoning Commission to either address the conditions associated with the recommendation made by the commission or submit new information. So tonight, yes, there is no 7-lot plan.
Can you describe how it's changed from 9 to 7, please? So we can understand. I'm not sure I understand what the benefit of 7 is over the current 9 as it's currently laid out.
Principally, it's to make those 2 lots that abut Etherton Road basically perpendicular versus parallel. And to accomplish that, you have a front setback. First, you have a dedication along Etherton Road of additional land area for right-of-way purposes. Then you have a front setback from that new dedication line. And then you have the reorientation of the lots to be perpendicular. And from the department's perspective, there's 2 key elements here. You have to provide for a rear yard setback, and then you have to provide enough space for a typical deck, patio, or whatever access or accessory structure you might provide. From the department's perspective, that's usually a minimum of 50 feet when you count in the 30-foot rear yard setback. It's a perimeter lot, or in this case, less. And then just the typical rear yard area that's usable for some type of accessory structure or used. So to me, the reorientation or reconfiguration of those lots probably impact the 2 adjoining lots. And those are the 2 that the department would anticipate have to be either eliminated or certainly modified significantly.
So lot 8, lot 2 would either be absorbed by lot 9 and lot 1, or they'd be split between the lot on either side of them.
Right.
Okay.
And again, from the department's perspective, if you look at the surrounding land use pattern, to the north are larger lots. Any of them are part of near acres, a 3-acre development. And to the west, the lots are generally larger, not 3 acres in size. And so from the perspective of the department, we can't ignore the existing land use pattern. It's not to say that pattern will be retained forever, but the town center plan has been in place now almost 24 years. And the amount of change in the area has been relatively minimal if you take into account that area by Etherton Road and Manchester Road. So that plays a role in it as well. And then again, the lesser density addresses some of the concerns about grading up to the property lines, I think, as well as stormwater runoff.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah, just going to near the end on page 6, other agencies. I just want confirmation. It says it's compliance to MSD, so that means it has sewage. It's not septic. It's there at the end near your summary and recommendation. It's 6. It's the other agencies at the very bottom.
Yes. So basically what that says is no project will move forward unless it's compliant to MSD regulations. And so it'll have to be on public sewer.
Okay.
That's not individual household treatment systems, septic tanks and drain fields.
Great. And then D, other utility companies, would that be like Missouri American Water as well? Would be
Yeah.
part of the utility?
Yes,
Okay, so it has public water and not well.
exactly.
Perfect. And then the last question is, if you're asking for a recommendation for 7, does this speed the process up? Because usually if we approved, then the next meeting, we would see the design and that would be the final approval before it goes to city council, as opposed to pushing this until we see the 7. Then it would take one more step after that. So basically this accelerates it. So is there a reason that we need to accelerate this without seeing the plan first?
Well, certainly a motion tonight could be to postpone per a submittal of a plan that the commission would like to review that shows 7 lots versus 9. again, from the department's perspective, we believe that 7 lots is the appropriate number based upon its review of the property, the surrounding area, and concerns that have been expressed by both you as commission members during the public hearing and from the public that participated in the public hearing or submitted comments online. Certainly, density is a key issue for the success of a project. You heard it during public comment from Fisher Frickel. But in this particular case, there were warning signs provided to the petitioner during the Development and Zoning Review Committee as well. And that Development and Zoning Review Committee include the 2 council members that represent this ward, Ward 8, the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the council liaison to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the mayor. And so from that perspective, the department appreciates that the reduction is to 9 lots, but I still think there needs to be more done.
I have one more follow-up question. What's this? Is there an average lot size within the city center for other single-family home developments that have already been built and approved, obviously?
I would generally say the zoning district designations that have been used most in town center are either the R3, 10,000 square foot resident district, or the R4, 7,500 square foot resident district. Where we see the smaller lot sizes, and Commissioner Boren, they can range anywhere generally. In Canterbury and Main Street Crossing, they can range anywhere from about 6,000 square feet to 7,500 square feet. But what we also see is abundant common ground, and common ground that is used to preserve trees, provide stormwater management facilities, and et cetera. Now, again, this site is not treed, and there is stormwater management, but I hate to keep going back to what I've said before, but what's driving this more so than anything is the pattern of development in the vicinity and the desire to manage stormwater here, from what I believe is with a little bit more breathing room caused by the reduction in 2 lots.
Commissioner Helfrey.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. So I have a couple things that I want to address. Number one is the traffic on Etherton Road. So that's been a consistent complaint of the people that live on Etherton or down further in. They don't want more traffic because they feel that the road isn't safe. So number one, would that road be addressed prior to construction or part of construction?
Well, there is a requirement for road improvements as part of the recommendation for the 7 lots. Will it entail off-site improvements, meaning north of the subject site or south of the subject site? No. That will come with development as it occurs. As you know, in Canterbury and Main Street Crossing, we required road improvements on the half of the right-of-way that the development has frontage to. And that would be the case here. And collectively, we incrementally add improvements. And then there is also, and Mr. Brown, our Director of Public Works, is on Zoom tonight. We are working on a long-term plan for improvements to Etherton Road. Okay. I don't know the traffic count on Etherton Road. I don't live on Etherton Road, so I can't say if it's light, medium, or heavy. I know what our traffic study we did as part of the town center update said, and it does require improvement, even if at the very minimum, facilities for pedestrians and bicyclists. But again, we do require improvements along the frontage.
Okay, thank you for that. The second thing I would ask is there a place, if we reduce the 9 lots to 7, is there a place for signage, or is there proposed signage for this small little cul-de-sac neighborhood to be placed near Etherton Road?
Well, certainly our code allows for what we call a subdivision information sign that in this case would say, I guess, Etherton Heights. That can either be in common ground with a strip or triangle of common ground at the intersection, or it can be on an easement on a private lot.
Okay, then my next 2 things are 2 things that I kind of come back to quite a bit on almost everything that we talk about. So forgive me if I sound redundant. One of the things that I had asked about was I ask about it every time we have something in town center, and that is the front porch or the garage door setbacks. And I was on the Town Center Update Meeting Committee. And when we voted on this, there were 11 of us, the vote was 11-0, that the garage setbacks would be a minimum setback of 15 feet. And that was for Town Center, which this property falls under. And it seems like every time something comes in front of us, or not every time, but many times these products come in front of us, that's one of my very first questions: are the garages set back? And time I'm told, well, no, but, or no, because. And so I would like to request that any project going forward in the city, that we enforce this 15-foot garage setback, because if we're not going to enforce it, then what's the point of having it? And we have got multiple properties in front of us that are all that issue is going to come up with each and every one of them. So number one, I would like that addressed with this property and any property going forward, that they need to meet the 15-foot setback for garages if they are in Town Center, because that is what it was voted on. I think, let's see here. 61% of people that voted said that they wanted it 15-foot setbacks in the garages. So that's one thing. The second thing is the basin, the detention basin at the end of the street. When we were speaking the last time we met about, I believe it was Eckerly Place. I think Mr. Stock talked about the basins and about how if they were put in properly that they would work. And so I guess the only concern I would have would be that, who installs this basin, that they do it properly and sod it. So, because that's one of the things he said, was that, if I remember correctly, he said that the basins needed to be finished last after all the construction, and then sodded to maintain that there was no silt and things of that nature in it. So I would request that in any basin that we have, that is a requirement, that it is done last and sodded, and so that they have every single chance of it being viable and it doesn't adversely affect the other properties. And so, being as verbose as I was, I would request that we postpone and allow the people for this to resubmit a drawing that shows us how it would look with the 7 lots and all the other changes that you requested, the side and street garages and the 15-foot setback garages. That's my motion.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
All right, so motion to postpone. Any further discussion? Councilman Brost?
What are the setbacks for the garages now?
They are 7.5 feet from the front of the actual dwelling, and that can be inclusive of the porch. But what we do to offset that additional 7.5 feet that isn't requested, we require the garage doors not to be greater than 20 feet in width. So that means they're separated. And we require carriage doors with windows. And then obviously we always require that upgrade in the materials. So the intent is still to hide the garage. I don't know if 15 feet is necessarily the magic number, but certainly if the motion is approved for postponement, we'll certainly pass on that information to the engineer.
So apples to apples, we have a difference of 7.5 versus 15, so we don't have a definitional issue. You're on board that Vicky's saying 15 and it's at 7.5.
The neighborhood design standards, as amended by the Town Center Update team, is 15 feet. We've not had success applying that, and that's why we've worked around with different approaches to achieve what we think is a reasonable compromise, and that is 7.5 feet and the upgrades that we require to the garages themselves.
Do we have examples of a variance to the 15?
Yes, Main Street crossing is probably the best.
And what are their setbacks?
I believe we did something like 6 to 7.5 feet. The porches were substantially greater than the minimum that we typically require, which is 6 feet. And so when you drive through Main Street crossing, what you'll see first is the porches, and their individual property owners have done a wonderful job of making that outdoor living space an extension of the dwelling itself. The garages, in my opinion, and again, it's just my opinion, are secondary to what you see in terms of the front of the house and the porch.
Commissioner Helfrey.
I have no problem if the garage is set back from the porch, but we did vote on that as a community that it was 15 feet. And I just think that should be honored.
Commissioner Bourne.
Is there a thought process behind why 15 feet? I mean, what does that add if the garage faces forward? Does it add something in particular? I'm not sure I understand the substance between 7.5 to 15. As long as they're facing forward, we're still going to see those garages no matter what. So what are we accomplishing with an extra 7.5 feet?
Well, the extra 7.5 feet for the total of 15 feet was something that came out of the original town center plan that Andres Dewani, our consultant and his design team, proposed. What we were told time and time again by different home builders, ones that have been successful in our town center, that alters the interior living space radically. And that many of the buyers did not necessarily understand that kind of layout relative to it being good living space. And so we took that into account. Obviously, we want projects that comply to our town center plan, but we also want projects that are successful and that people want to buy in and find it to be a good living space for them well into the future.
I'd like to amend my comment earlier of seconding. I'm fine with 7.5 feet personally. I have no issue with that.
Mr. Young, how should we treat Commissioner Boren's request to withdraw his second?
Well, because it's been first and seconded, it belongs to the commission at this point. So it really is up to the commission whether they wish to accept the withdrawal or not.
Let's just go ahead and vote on the postponement right now then. All those in favor of postponing, say aye.
Wait, whoa.
Oh.
I don't think we're done with discussion, are we?
Oh. Okay. I thought it was motion to postpone
yeah.
needed to be acted on pretty quickly.
And as a primary motion, and Mr. Young, again, the discussion, any discussion that follows the motion and second, a successful motion to have a postponement needs to be about the postponement. Mr. Young, am I
incorrect? So
incorrect?
any additional comment right now at the first and second one, it has to pertain to the postponement only.
Thank you.
Commissioner Helfrey.
So the postponement, the only postponement I'm requesting is that they get a chance to show us that we get to see it drawn up as you are proposing it as 7 lots instead of 9. The garage setback doesn't have to do with the proposed postponement. That is just an opinion I have on the town center properties. Is that a little more clear?
Yes,
Okay.
and again, to Commissioner Boren, that may change his desire to withdraw his second,
Well,
knowing the
it's just
clarity.
the postponement is just that my motion for postponement was just so that we can see it drawn as the city has recommended it.
I agree with that statement.
Any other, Councilman Gross?
I mean, could it be a little simpler and just saying we're just postponing?
Sure.
I mean, period.
All
So there's no other, we're
Next month.
postponing. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if there are no more comments regarding the postponement, I would ask for a voice vote.
All those in favor of postponing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye or nay? And abstentions? All right. So next on the agenda, PZ 262728-23, Mr. Newberry.
A response to a communication from Christopher against Fisher and Frickel Homes, which is dated September 4, 2024 regarding PZ 2627 and 28-23 Fisher and Frickel Custom Homes, The Point at Brightleaf, R4 7,500 square foot residence district with a planned residential development overlay district. Street addresses 17100, 17130, and 17150 Taylor Road and 2346 State Route 109. St. Louis County locator numbers 23V140245, 23V140218, 23V140162, and 23V140227. which seeks a modification to the existing site-specific governing ordinance for this residential development to increase the number of allowable single-family detached dwellings and associated lots from the approved number of 30 to 34 in total. The city council, as part of its final action regarding this matter, reduced the number of allowable lots from that recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The petitioner is now seeking this increase in the lot totals based upon proposed modifications to the previous design components relating to them. Ward 5.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vinich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight a report with recommendation regarding the matter before you, as was just read into the record by Mr. Newberry. This particular request is to reaffirm the Planning and Zoning Commission's action in terms of its favorable recommendations relative to this project for 34 home sites, meaning 34 detached single-family dwellings on individual lots. As was referenced by the speaker during public comment, the City Council received the report from the Planning and Zoning Commission, conducted its public hearing, introduced legislation that contained the recommendation for 34 dwellings and lots, and ultimately at second reading before final passage, reduced the number to 30. The process for reconsideration by the City Council of an action on its part has to occur at the next meeting of the same body. That particular deadline was not met, which is why tonight the matter is before you so it can return to City Council. The department would note that in its original recommendation, as well as the action by the Planning and Zoning Commission, 34 lots was supported. The 34 lots in terms of its density is consistent with Village E in the villages at Brightleaf, and that is the portion of the larger project that abuts Taylor Road and is immediately across the street from the subject site. Also, the department would note that the configuration of the lots and the placement of the homes, for the most part, is very detailed in this particular plan set that was presented to the commission as well as City Council. But it is not the final plan, so to speak. And as the process moves from the more general to the specific, and as you know, commission members, we always kind of start with the zoning process as best available information. At the site development plan, we move to surveys that are done for the specific site. And we get more and more specific as we go to finally the construction drawings, or what we call the improvement plans. The 34 lots, relative to the department's opinion, is a workable number on the 8+ acre site. The department believes that through that process, the winnowing we do as we move from general to specific, those concerns about the 4 lots where additional landscaping is congregated can be addressed through better site design, more landscaping, and again, compliance to the requirements from the conditions in place and the other review agencies. And finally, the department would just note that this particular project, as presented and acted upon by the Planning and Zoning Commission earlier in 2023, is consistent with the components of the town center plan and would mirror Village E in the villages at Brightleaf, which was a very successful village relative to its completion and the availability of a unit type that isn't necessarily found anywhere else in Wildwood that's relatively new. So tonight, the department is reaffirming its previous support of the 34 lot plan and recommends the commission continue forward as they did in the past. After the motion, the department will be available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. Commissioner Helfrey.
Mr. Vinich, why, just out of curiosity, what made the city council say no to 4 lots?
Well, certainly I was participant in the conversation that was held But I think there's just a concern on city council, at least the majority of them, that the greater the density, the greater the risk, meaning to the environment, stormwater management, and just the perception and desire of residents in the vicinity to see less than more.
Okay, and Mr. Collins mentioned a pipeline easement and an electric pipe easement that's not on this drawing, right?
Well, certainly the utility lines are actually in public right of way. That is part of State Route 109. We dealt with the company that basically upgraded the lines, and they did substantial damage to the area, tree removal. But again, they're upgrading the utility grid, electric grid, so as it's better weather resistant and more reliable. So from the perspective of the city, we asked them to restore the underground pipelines. Nothing can be built on top of those, and any protection zone, buffer, whatever words you like to use, will be implemented as part of the site development plan. And certainly with a dwelling, any type of improvements would not be encumbering it, because obviously there needs to be access to it.
Okay, and the final thing I have for you is Mr. Peterson mentioned the noise and the sound mitigation from 109 and the speed on Etherton Road. And is there any way that that the city can address those things? Should this be approved and construction begins?
Well, specific to this site, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended and City Council concurred that there be implementation of sound mitigation steps for all the dwelling units that would be impacted by higher than normal levels of noise. Outside this particular project, the city did conduct a noise analysis. A gentleman named Dr. Thunder, who is a acoustical engineer and doctor of the science, did the analysis. And there are areas along Route 100 and Route 109 that are at the cusp of exceeding what would be even the most lenient standard. And so there is a pilot program that is being discussed as part of this year's budget for 2025 to do some type of sound mitigation in this vicinity. I don't know a specific location. I don't know what that mitigation effort might be. Sound walls are probably the most effective, but they are also the most expensive. And in areas of constricted amount of space, landscape berms and landscaping is the next best alternative, but it requires a substantial amount of space. So we are looking at a pilot program. If City Council funds it, we hope to have it implemented in 2025. That would be the template, if successful, that we would use elsewhere along the major arterial corridor.
Hold on. In reference to the utility lines, are those between the trail and 109?
Yes.
Okay, because I do see so these trees are all between the subdivision and the trail. So the utilities are on the other side of the trail.
So to be clear, the city's trail is in state right of way, as well as those utility lines. As you can see, the grading as shown in the preliminary form does not show it going beyond the boundaries of the private properties. So any trees that were retained after the utility work should not be disturbed under any recommendation provided by the department to the commission.
Commissioner Rubis?
My understanding is it depends on the pipeline and the nature of its use, and it varies. So as part of the process, if this project does move forward, we'll get that information for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we'll develop it as part of the site development plan review process. No, it has to remain unobstructed. Now, some easements have parking lot areas over it. Some utilities allow encroachments in their easements, but they also provide a disclaimer that if they need to get access to it, they'll take down what's there and they won't rebuild it because it's proceed at your own risk. But again, we will take caution with the easement because unobstructed access is critical to its function and safety. My recollection is that we will require one. I believe it's part of the conditions. I failed to attach the existing ordinance, but I believe that was one of the requirements. Very much so. Site distance analysis are required in almost all instances when new streets access existing public streets. Because obviously we want to make sure that a driver on the road isn't having trouble seeing people either turning in or turning out and vice versa. And yes, traffic calming, at least 25 years ago or so when the city incorporated, was something that we tried in multiple locations. For the most part, residents weren't accepting of them. Now we have on Taylor Road Extension in the villages of Brightleaf, where we have the major pedestrian crosswalks going on across Taylor Road. We have them on a speed hump. So as there is some recognition that you need to slow down here. And obviously, if you go to the coffee with the mayor, singular, there's always discussion about the new crosswalks with the flashing lights and the preference for those over others. So that's, it's just an ongoing issue with people needing to pay attention to the road and slow down and follow the speed limits that are posted on the road. Whatever speed you go it may get you there quicker, but not that much quicker that it's worth the risk to the pedestrian, bicyclist, or whoever.
Hey, Joe.
The meeting with the coffee with the mayor, this came up about this water problem that's in Brightleaf. Was there a meeting held between Fisher Frickdale, the city, and the residents, Mr. Petcock?
Mr. Brown, our Director of Public Works, and myself met with Mr. Pitcock at his home. We brought the approved engineered plans. There is a swale that's shown at the base of the hill, and that hill is part of public space owned by the city of Wildwood. At the most recent coffee with the mayor that Mr. Pitcock attended, I said I'd take a look at it again. Fisher Frickdale, I believe, has complied with the plan. If there's a problem, it's a problem we'll try to address through the city and the residents that are impacted.
So this is a problem that's between the homeowners and the city?
Well, it's not a problem between the homeowners and the city. I believe the city is trying to find a solution that's workable and inexpensive. But there, as you know, in rear yard areas, we have swales to transport runoff to area inlets so we can get them to the basins so they're detained and metered out at an appropriate rate so they don't cause damage downstream. And again, the area behind Mr. Pitcock's home and the other home sites, it's irrigated. And the day I was out there with Mr. DeGents, it had the ground was saturated, not just the swale, but the yards themselves. So I think fine tuning some of the irrigation and also looking at some solutions to better transport the water, that's something we'll look at and certainly try our best. I'm not making any promises though, because my review of the plans, and I believe Mr. Brown would concur, the swale's where it's supposed to be.
Okay, so this is water that's being added by private homeowners' irrigation systems.
Well, the day that Mr. Gintz and I were out there, it was a clear blue sky day and the ground was saturated.
Okay, well, that'll come up in the site development meeting. That's all right.
Councilman Brost. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Depler had her hand up. Let me get to her first.
Thank you. The first
Commissioner
thing, some people I can't hear, or people online probably can't hear their questions. So just wanted to remind people to use their speaker. And then the other question I had, looking at the plan that they provided, which are the 4 lots that the city council had recommended were removed? Or did they have a specific?
Generally speaking, Commissioner Depler, they were 19 and 20 and 31 and 32. And so wherever you see the red dot, which reflects additional landscaping, those lots, the red dots are behind the lots that I believe the city council wanted removed.
Okay, thank you.
19, 20, 31, and 32.
Okay.
Councilman Brost.
Yeah, in the discussion tonight on traffic and noise, I guess I'm wondering is over, I believe the population of Wildwood really hasn't changed in 10 years, if I'm correct. So when they do a traffic study, particularly like if you look at 109 and 100, is the increase really a result of the development in Wildwood or just the growth of the overall area, which travels through our great city?
Well, if you talk to Missouri Department of Transportation, obviously they believe Route 100 is what I believe inter-county connector. So it's intended to get people from Franklin County and points east through the city of Wildwood in terms of travel as quickly as possible. So yes, I believe the traffic numbers have grown on Route 100, and certainly I've noticed the change on Route 109. Every time I see a tractor trailer on the route that isn't delivering locally, so to speak. And so from that perspective, I did an analysis today from Mayor Garitano, and we were talking about just town center in general. And I think over the past 25 plus years that the plan's been in place, we've added about 800 units into town center. 300 plus of those are Main Street Crossing and Villages at Brightleaf. So in 20 plus years, the rate of absorption of vacant ground hasn't been that substantial, if you think about it and use the numbers. Now, there are people in Wildwood that believe town center shouldn't have any development, but the job of the department for the most part is to look at the plan. The plan's been adopted by a citizen volunteer committee. It's been adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission and endorsed and ratified by City Council. You all have the latitude to make those decisions where you want to make adjustments. But I would argue that from the perspective of the department, the plan's the document we use.
Commissioner Helfrey.
Well, Mr. Vintage, I think I would like to make a motion to support the city's recommendation on this. And just to clarify, you did say that a traffic study on that area is part of the recommendation. Is that correct?
No site development.
I'm trying to find the ordinance that was prepared by the department. Maybe Mr. Dewberry will have greater success on a laptop versus my phone, but
okay.
Typically what we require and the commission always asks for as part of a favorable recommendation, obviously a stormwater management plan. We now do require phase 1 environmental assessments because we recognize that we may think the site has been vacant all the time it was in existence, but it may not have been, and there may have been a history associated with it. We require floodplain studies, traffic studies, archaeological studies, etc. And again, depend on Mr. Newberry because I'm not having much success with finding it.
Okay, well, that won't necessarily affect my motion. I'm just gonna make a motion to accept the city's recommendation.
Well, thank you, but I'd like to give the answer if I could. And like
Okay.
you're saying,
Is there a second? Well, you look.
Question before we get there.
Yeah, there's still going to be time for discussion. All right, Commissioner. Reed. All right, go ahead, Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, just back to the water. So the original plan, or the gentleman in the front talked about the water. Was that a bad design? Was there any escrow money for to fix it in the future? I mean, I can't remember. I was new P and Z at the time. I don't remember this particular issue, but what recourse is there?
well, just remember the escrow process is a contractual agreement between the developer and the city. It's not between the homeowners association. It's not between individual property owners. And it's all premised on two things relative to stormwater. We wait until Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District approves the plan. They are the primary authority for stormwater regulations and implementation. Then our Department of Public Works and the Department of Planning review the plans to make sure that any additional requirements that have been recommended by the commission and imposed by city council are met. In this instance, and I know Mr. Pickhock said we stood out and back and said there's a problem. Well, there's a water problem, but it's not relative to the plan that was approved by those two entities, MSD and the city. There's a swale required at the base of that hillside. And that swale ensures that water coming off that open space goes into the swale and to the area inlet, which I believe if you're standing at this, I'm standing in Mr. Pickhock's yard and looking south is to the east.
So there's supposed to be water there?
Yes.
Okay, so it was designed to make sure there's water there.
Yes, there's an area of public space that was not disturbed. And the grading plan for the home sites graded up to that edge where they could, and to control runoff.
That's it. Okay.
To control runoff, we use a system of swales and area inlets, curbs and gutters, and curb inlets, etc.
And this has nothing to do then with the builder. They did what they were supposed to do.
Well, from the department's perspective, we listened to complaints. We're still holding over $250,000 on detention retention. And so we haven't released yet because we want to make sure that those detention and retention bases actually function. But in this particular case, in terms of grading, that was approved.
Okay, and I'm just wondering if there's something that needs to be done to fix something. There is no fix. It's doing what it's supposed to have done. And that was just approved back in the day then.
When we have a storm event, water falls on the ground. If we don't control it, it sheet flows and goes every which way it wants. And from the perspective of MSD in the city, we try to control it as best we can so that with the new impervious surface, the homes that people live in, the driveways they park their cars on and drive into their garages, the patios, all those things are managed so we can get it to a control point, hold it, treat it for water quality purposes, and then discharge it at a rate that won't be destructive to downstream property. Does it work perfectly? No. But we do the best we can with the engineering community, MSD, and the city to basically get it right. There's all kinds of things that happen. People put stuff in the swale. They remove the swale. They irrigate too much. They do this, they do that. And those are the problems we face more often than any. Bad engineering? I don't think so generally.
Okay.
The Stock and Associates, the Sterling Engineering, I think they do as good a job as they can. And we try to do our best in reviewing the plans.
Okay, I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just wondering if there's a fix here and if there's money to fix it and if it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Well, there's supposed to be a swale there. But again, I told Mr. Pickhock at the coffee with the mayor, I'll go back out and look again. And I'll bring our new project manager and see if he has any insights that we've missed previously.
Okay.
Because we want it right as much as he does.
The last question is, if this is approved tonight, for your recommendation. Since it's come back to P and Z, there will not be a second. It's going straight back to city council.
Go straight back to city council for a public hearing and then debate there.
And that is between the city council. And so the changes from what it said in here, city council final decision on that was 30 homes.
Correct.
So now it's coming back to us to say, oh, it's okay. So what has changed? Just some more trees? More?
Well, they've added more trees, but I will tell you that we will look at those. Well, there's a string of lots there that I think there might be a few changes that would make them better. Not decreasing the number, but I think there's a few changes that could be addressed. Oftentimes it has to deal with just something about the house placement and if there's some flexibility in that. So again, the commission recommended 34 home sites, lots and dwelling. The petitioner is asking for a reaffirmation of that. The department supported it before it came to the commission. And so
right.
Nothing's changed for the department to say that 30 lots is appropriate. Certainly, maybe the best plan is 1 lot, but that's not consistent with the town center plan. And so from that perspective.
So your plan is to have some improvements before it goes back to city council to say, hey, you went 30. The P and Z has said, hey, no, we want to say 34 again. And between tonight, a reaffirmation, if we give that to you, then there's going to be, here's all the things we've done city council, but we don't know what those are just yet.
We will be prepared to address the commission's recommendation and any thoughts that we have next week, or excuse me, when the public hearing is held in November, I guess.
And we still have site development plan at a future date.
That we will see.
Right.
Okay.
And Ms. Helfrey, thanks to Mr. Newberry and his wondrous grasp of technology, we are requiring a traffic impact study.
Thank you, Mr. Vintage and Mr. Newberry.
Any further discussion? Councilman Brust?
Yeah, I believe that what developed during the council meeting was, and Mr. Vunich, correct me if, or add to it, but I believe the concern really started to grow over erosion. And more is considered worse to erosion. And I believe the conclusion, and I don't think I changed from the 34, but to a degree, we need to rely on the professionals. And the city is very, very deep in trying to address erosion issues. And I think that's what reduced it from 34 to 30, just as background.
I think that's a very good, succinct summary of the discussion that was held at City Council. And I will tell you, just as a sidebar, last Monday night, the United States Geological Survey completed its study of the Cox Creek watershed, the middle and upper reaches. And they came to 3 conclusions. 2 I'll mention tonight. First, climate is changing, and for the foreseeable future, at least 25 years, and then they went out to 75 years, we should expect more low frequency, high intensity storms like we've been seeing of late. Those downpours that just no one can plan for, and certainly we don't engineer for yet. And then secondly, the more storage you have, that can offset climate. And so from that perspective, the study was, I think, very valuable because it kind of gives us a new direction, or affirms a direction we were heading already with our watershed erosion task force.
Please, just one last question. So if we affirm, that is just basically it's a requirement for the builder to get back in front of city council because they missed their second window or their second city council meeting to do so. And if we say no, then it's 30 and that's it.
No, it'll go back.
It's going back whether we say 30 or 34, it's going back anyway.
And all the department is saying is there's a consistency with this proposal with the town center plan. And oh, by the way, the commission endorsed it when it was here before.
So we could affirm the city council's
Certainly.
original as well. And then they could have their say in front, they're having their say in front of city council and we're required for that. That's where we're at.
You are a step in the process that's necessary. But again, as I say, you have complete latitude. You can affirm the 30 units, or you can say.
In either way, city council sees it.
Exactly, sir.
So my 2 cents would be just that way and then let them apply for 34. I would not want to
We
go to
already
the
have
city
a
council.
motion in a second. So,
Yeah.
Commissioner Depler?
There was a second.
Yeah. Yeah, Commissioner
No,
Rubin
I never.
seconded it. Yeah.
So
Sorry, Commissioner Depler.
I had two things I want to add. First, I wouldn't say it's unprecedented that there's erosion issues with Fisher and Frichtel's developments. I've seen it firsthand, and it was never really addressed. We ended up having to address it ourselves, some of our neighbors. Secondly, I was just curious. I thought for this particular zoning, you know, the guidance is 7,500 square feet per lot. These are all less than that. You know, what is the justification for using the proposed zoning? And I realize the other village at Brightleaf plot was at the high density as well. I don't think that requires that we match what is right next to it and have such a high density. So my proposal would be stick with the 30 as the city council, or even less, in my opinion, is what this size of a property would support.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, as with Mr. Pitcock, I'd like to know that location where you said it was not addressed. I think you know that the Department of Planning, Code Enforcement, as well as the Department of Public Works spent a lot of time out at Brightleaf Court and Birch Forest Drive trying to figure out the solutions to whatever problems were identified. So I'd like to know that. And from that perspective, we'll put it on the list and take another look. Thank you.
All right. All right. Roll call vote.
Okay.
We'll vote again.
Could the motion be
Yeah, the
repeated?
motion is to support the department's recommendation for 34 homes.
And what happens if we say no?
We'll see. Then
It goes back to 30 and it still
Well-
goes before the city council, correct?
no, then we haven't, then it dies unless there's another motion, correct? Or
The
we just.
The
stays with-
process is a favorable recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission is scheduled for public hearing. A denial is a receive and file, and there has to be an affirmative action on the city council's part to bring it forward for consideration and discussion.
Can I ask one quick final question just to summarize this thing so I really get my head around it? They've recommended removing 4 lots. In your professional opinion, Mr. Vinish, is there anything significant at this time to be gained, assuming you're going to do these additional screenings? Is there really any additional significant achievement by removing those 4 lots versus approving 34?
And certainly there an argument could be made, as Ms. Stepler just explained, that we don't have to mirror developments on either side of the road. But when I look at Village E, Orchard Village, I believe is what has been described, I think it's a very nice subdivision, and it provides a housing type that isn't generally available in the city. That's newer. We have Sandalwood Creek condominiums, things along those lines. But from the department's perspective, I look at Village E and I see a lot of people that purchase there that like their homes. We're trying to address the key complaints, and that's the bioretention basins, and to a certain degree now the draining.
What I'm saying is, by adding those 4 lots, is there anything to be gained by removing them?
The department did not see any gain.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just would like to remind everyone on the commission that we just don't speak. We get recognized by the chair and then get permission to say something so we can keep these meetings moving along. We're volunteers here. At some point, I'd like to go home for dinner. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Depler, did you have something else?
No.
Okay. All right. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Boren,
Approve.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
No.
Commissioner Depler,
No.
Commissioner Depler votes no. Commissioner Jackson.
No.
Commissioner Rubis.
Yes.
Chair Beatty.
Yes.
Councilmember Brost.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 6-3, I believe.
6-3.
All right, thank you. All right, let's see here. Next up, PZ 2526 and 26A-14. Mr. Newberry.
And Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'll read the next two items in at the same time, sort of related to the same
Sure.
issue. A response
Speed this
to,
up.
thank you. A response to a request from Main Street Crossing Homeowners Association regarding PZ 2526 and 26A-14 Main Street Crossing, care of Payne Family Homes LLC, R4 7,500 square foot residence district with an amended planned residential development overlay district, east side of State Route 109, south side of State Route 100, which seeks a modification to the site-specific governing ordinance, thereby eliminating the description that all service lanes, alleys, shall be private in nature forever. Accompanying this requested amendment, this ordinance amendment request is a recommendation report from the Department of Planning regarding the acceptance of a set of alleys that were platted as private, which are part of the Main Street Crossing subdivision, PZ 2526 and 26A-14 Main Street Crossing, care of Payne Family Homes LLC, but by city policy can now be considered for dedication for public purposes, with said review being consistent with the requirements of Chapter 89 zoning and planning of the revised statutes of Missouri, when the city considers acceptance of major capital improvements for such purposes. This review by the Planning and Zoning Commission and Planning and Zoning Commission is also required under the city's policy for acceptance of private improvements. Both of these items are located in Ward 8.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as was just read by Mr. Newberry into the record, this is for the most part a two-part request. The first deals with the site-specific ordinance that governs the 104 lot development called Main Street Crossing. When originally approved per the town center plan, all alleys were to be private in nature and not for public maintenance. Subsequently, as part of the update of the town center plan that was concluded in 2021, the volunteer committee recommended that alleys in town center be public in nature. The Planning and Zoning Commission adopted that requirement, and ultimately City Council endorsed and ratified it and created a policy for the same. So tonight, the first component of the two-part process is a recommendation to amend the site-specific ordinance to be consistent with the town center plan and the policy adopted by City Council, which would allow for the private alleys as platted now to become public and and receive public maintenance as any other street in the subdivision. Is there any questions regarding the first part? Department be glad to answer them at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vunich. Any discussion or motion, Commissioner Helfrey?
I make a motion to approve the city's recommendation on that.
All right, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Rubis. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohn. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Commissioner Clayton.
Yes.
Commissioner Depler.
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis.
Yes.
Commissioner Bourne.
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey.
Yes.
Give Mr. Cohn a second.
All right.
Yes.
Mr. Cohen, you may
Yes,
want to
I
stay if
approve.
you're not comfortable because you are away.
Understood. I approve.
Thank you. Chair Beatty
Yes.
and Councilmember Brost.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the second component of the two-part process is a recommendation report from the Department of Planning to the Planning and Zoning Commission that supports a favorable recommendation from this body to allow the City Council to consider accepting the private alleys as public alleys for maintenance purposes. The report describes the process that the city has gone through in terms of taking private improvements and allowing them to be public in nature, and the process and policy that was adopted by City Council. Along with that process, the department does provide an analysis that identifies consistency with the town center plan in this regard is paramount, and the practicality in this particular case of having all of the roadway improvements, so to speak, under public maintenance in town center. If there are any questions regarding this particular matter, the department's available to respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. Any questions or motion? Just Commissioner Rubis?
Just a technicality. We're taking a
Oh, it's on. Sorry.
We're taking a private thoroughfare street and making it public. Other than the city having to maintain it, what public use could there be on these alleys?
Well, as a public, let's say, right of way, for lack of a better term, the public can actually use it now. And although there's no need to, because there's public streets in the alleys are at the rear of the lots, public streets are at the front. But from a pedestrian and bicyclist standpoint, they can obviously now use them and not necessarily be part of the subdivision. There are some rights that transfer, but for the most part, this is something that came out of, again, our town center update process and the desire on the part of those residents in town center to basically have a guarantee of maintenance for alleys that provide access to the system public streets.
Commissioner Rubis? Oh, sorry, Bourne. I apologize for that, Commissioner Bourne.
So out of that commission, in the town center, it was understood that we would bring all of those alleyways and roadways into being owned by the city, but we're not doing that outside of the town center. Is that correct?
There is a policy for private streets to become public streets. We, as you know, in the non-urban resident district zone areas, we have a lot of public streets, but it's not a simple policy or process to basically have that occur. Even for alleys, they have to meet a certain specification. They have to be in good condition. Any repairs that need to be made at the expense of the homeowners before the city takes them over. So the intent, at least on city council part, and I'll defer to Mr. Brose, was that if there are those instances in town center where alleys are accepted or private streets in the rural areas are accepted for public purposes, the taxpayers are getting a very good street that'll require a minimum amount of maintenance for a long period of time.
But it was originally designed as private. So how is it in the public's interest to now take that burden of financial maintenance on?
Well, the public interest is relative to the group in town center that are served by alleys. So it's not, I would consider, a universal benefit. But again, for those individuals that live in the subdivision or those individuals that live by the subdivision, there now is additional access to the alleys themselves that didn't necessarily exist before. I would only say that at the town center update process, as part of the town center update process, this was by far the closest vote. It was approved, but the vote was 9-6. All the others were 14, 15 to 0.
And just as a bit of background, I used to live in Victoria Crossing, the condominiums in Cherry Hills, and we had private streets there that we wanted to have the city take over, but discovered that the concrete was too thin. And so the city basically said, no, not until you replace all of those slabs of concrete.
Again, it's only fair to the taxpayers that don't directly benefit.
Fair. All right. Any further discussion or motion?
Thank you.
Commissioner Cohen?
Make a motion to approve the department's recommendation.
Seconded by Commissioner Helfrey. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis.
Yes.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
and Councilmember Roast.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Next, Mr. Vunich, PZ 118-92.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A recommendation report of the Site Development Plan Subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding PZ 118-92, St. Louis Nursery Partnership, West County Feed and Supply Store, now Good News Brewing Company, amended CA Plan Commercial District and Town Center Workplace District, street address 2603 West Avenue, St. Louis County, located number 24V 420175. which supports the conversion of the current use and building of this 3-acre site to a restaurant and microbrewery with accessory uses including game areas, bocce courts, a small stage, and an outdoor pavilion. This particular property is located in Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. As Mr. Vunich just described, this is a presentation of a recommendation report from the Site Plan Subcommittee regarding the site plan for this location for sit-down restaurant and future phases. The Site Plan Subcommittee met on September 23rd to discuss this matter and took favorable action to direct the department to prepare a favorable recommendation for this site development plan. So again, the planned use is at the current West County feed store. It's for the redevelopment of the property to have a sit-down restaurant, Good News Brewing, and then 2 potential future phases as well. The list of items described in the report relate to the parking at the site, which includes 33 spaces. The limited grading at the site to accommodate some of the stormwater management facilities. Importantly, the connection to MSD, the public sewer, and the destruction of or the demolition of the existing septic system that serves the store. So those are some characteristics of the property. The question that we're asking the Site Plan Subcommittee related to many items, but one was the disposition of the existing propane tanks at the property. Those are to be removed with the development of this property. Other items related to the access points on West Avenue. There are 2. The petitioner described to the subcommittee that the southern access is intended to be used by service vehicles and emergency vehicles, but it will be retained. Again, to conclude, the Site Plan Subcommittee is recommending approval of the site plan tonight, and the rationales for that recommendation are listed in the recommendation report. And we just always want to reiterate that this is a type of use that has been heard for many years as something that's desirable by our residents. So with that, the department's available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Any discussion? All right, Commissioner Clayton. So you
Make a recommendation that we approve the subcommittee's recommendation.
All right. Commissioner
Second.
Cohn? All right. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis.
Yes.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Roast.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have PZ 20 and 21-22. Mr. Newberry.
PZ, a recommendation report of the Site Development Plan Subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding PZ 20 and 21-22 Greenberg Development Company LLC, Wildwood GBK LLC, PO Box 486, Wildwood, Missouri 63038. Second amended C8 Planned Commercial District, amended C8 Planned Commercial District C8 Planned Commercial District with a conditional use permit, southwest corner of Taylor Road and Main Street. Street addresses 16700, 16720, 16727, 16780, and 16795 Main Street, St. Louis County. Locator numbers 23V310561, 23V10570, 23V310581, 24V630303, and 24V630312, which supports the development of this overall 11-acre site with a single building housing 188 multiple family units with commercial uses part of it, along with its Main Street frontage and recreational amenities, including a set of public pickleball courts and stormwater improvements. Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vinich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department, per the Site Plan Subcommittee, has prepared a recommendation report regarding the site development plan package for this mixed-use development that is being proposed at the intersection of Taylor Road and Main Street. This is the 11+ acres that constitutes the southwest corner of that intersection and also extends south along Taylor Road to the Manchester Road roundabout. Included in that particular property or tract of land is a 2+ acre site that is located on the east side of Taylor Road, immediately south of Dearborg's Town Center. The Site Plan Subcommittee held its meeting on this particular matter on September 23rd. And at that time, the Site Plan Subcommittee heard presentations from the Department of Planning as well as the petitioner's engineer. In those presentations, they noted that there was a major change relative to the project, and that is the 14 detached single-family dwellings on individual lots that were to be in the southernmost section of the tract of land had been removed. The developer that had expressed interest was no longer prepared to proceed forward. Therefore, the department requested that the lots be removed so as there is no confusion about what is being presented for consideration to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The remaining elements of the site development plan package include the single building that will contain up to 189 multiple family units. That building will be 4 stories in height, and on the ground level facing Main Street will be commercial activities as well as activities relating to the multiple family units, i.e. the office, the workout room, meeting space, etc. The Site Plan Subcommittee had a number of questions relating to access, stormwater management, parking, and other items. And in the report, the Site Plan Subcommittee authorized to be prepared. Those issues are addressed as best as possible. What I will describe is that relative to stormwater management, the petitioner is proposing bioretention basins, as we've discussed in previous proposals. In this particular instance, that will be a single entity that will be managing those. That is the owner of the apartment or multiple family complex. That is probably the best case scenario for bioretention basins, in that there is a single entity responsible from inception to conclusion of the project and then beyond. Those bioretention basins are strategically placed to accept runoff and manage it, again, according to MSD standards and City of Wildwood requirements. Additionally, there are parking garages shown in a section of the proposed parking lot area. There may be additional covered parking as the project proceeds forward. Any changes in that regard will have to come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for action as an amendment or site plan, section plan. Additionally, there are concerns relating to parking, and those concerns were, I believe, addressed by the fact that there's 330 spaces shown on or off street, on site, off street. There is additional parking on Main Street and Taylor Road in the public parking garage. And I think a key element is the cross parking agreement between this project and B&B theaters. All told, the parking ratio is close to 2 spaces per unit, which is extremely high for a multiple family development. In most instances, we see anywhere from 1.25 to 1.5 spaces per unit. And we know in most instances that may not be sufficient, given the mix of units here is primarily, I believe, 2 bedrooms, plus some 3 bedrooms as well. And that's not to say that one bedroom units do not have 2 occupants. So parking wise, I believe we've addressed the concerns there as well. One of the key elements of this particular project is the public space amenities. And key amongst that is the intended donation of the 2.5 acres of the project that is, as described, east of Taylor Road, south of Dearborg's Town Center, that will be developed by the city with 4 pickleball courts. And on this plan, the site development plan, that area is shown as being developed with such. In conjunction with the pickleball courts, we have fencing, benches, an enclosure for a temporary restroom facility, and other amenities, along with stormwater management and landscaping. This will be a key element for the city's parks and recreation. Pickleball courts are one of the most requested uses that the Department of Planning and Parks hears from our residents about. And so we are providing them here in this particular instance. There are no proposed per se improvements to Taylor Road and Main Street. Those streetscapes have been completed for a number of years and in use. And from the perspective of the department, per the site plan subcommittee, there are pedestrian and trail connections that interlace the site and will connect to the existing system that has been built and in place for a number of years. The site plan subcommittee ultimately authorized the preparation of a favorable report. That favorable report in draft form is before you tonight for consideration. And if there are any questions regarding this particular package of plans, the department will be available to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. So one quick question I had, did we come to a decision on lighting the pickleball courts? Nothing on ours yet, but well, is that still TBD?
That's to be determined. Obviously, the plan set shows lighting as a component of the pickleball courts. That is a decision that I believe ultimately will be made by City Council once we start calculating the cost of the pickleball courts. The land is to be donated by the petitioner. The construction of the pickleball courts is the responsibility of the city. Ultimately, any change to the plan that's acted upon tonight, if favorable, will come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission as, again, an amendment or a section of the plan.
All right, thank you. Any discussion or motion? Commissioner Rubis?
I recommend approval of this site development committee's report.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Helfrey. Any further discussion or Commissioner Helfrey?
I would just like to say that I'm all for the lights. I think that we could adjust the timing of the lights for the pickleball courts, but I'm all for the lights. Okay, that's all I have.
I will pass on to Mr. Bros. There is an advocate for lighting, and as the city council representative on the commission, he is the one that will ultimately help make that
And I
decision.
completely support Commissioner Helfrey's statement.
Mr. Bros, if you're keeping track, that's 2 in favor. 3. 4.
Well, but it's got it dark at 5 o'clock, right? So you could have them on till 7 o'clock in the fall. So just something to throw out there. And if you put them in at the beginning, right, then you don't have to not have them forever.
Commissioner or Councilman Brost?
The land that was previously going to have the single family, is it just going to be a maintained field until later development?
Yes, obviously maintenance is key. Since the city's been using that area east of the theater for its events, we've maintained the property, and it's actually looking very good down in that area around the roundabout. So we'll have our expectation that that would continue, and it is shown on the plan as future development.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Abstain.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubus,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Next we have PZ 3-21, Mr. Vunich.
A request for final scheduling of a third work session of the Planning and Zoning Commission on potential changes to the City of Wildwood's PZ 3-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission on the subdivision and development regulations which have been under review by it since 2021. This particular item affects all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. As you know, the commission has been meeting and has work session meetings to discuss the potential amendments to regulations for the subdivision and development regulations. As you can see in the memo that the department prepared, the remaining items to be discussed are fairly short. So tonight, the department is asking for the commission's permission to schedule a meeting on November 4th, which is a normal meeting date of the Planning and Zoning Commission. But we're asking to schedule a work session before that meeting begins, and that would start as early as 5:15 p.m. To complete this review process. So with that, the department's just seeking maybe a motion, a voice vote to give that permission.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Jackson, second by Councilman Brost. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, motion carries. So
Thank
we'll
you.
see you early on November 4th. All right, next, PZ 9-20 update, Mr. Vunich.
An update on the 195-foot tall mono telecommunications tower along with associated equipment area, which is now under construction and identified by the city as PZ 9-20, New Singular Wireless, PCS LLC, doing business as AT&T Wireless, 1025 Lenox Park Boulevard Northeast, 3rd floor, Atlanta, Georgia, 30319, care of Matt Schleitzer, Network Real Estate, LLC, 5055 State Route N, St. Charles, Missouri, 63304. A conditional use permit, CUP, within the NU non-urban district for a 195-foot tall mono telecommunications tower along with associated equipment area located northwest side of Shepherd Road, west of its intersection with State Route 109. St. Louis County locator number 22V 140282, street address 2001 Shepherd Road, St. Alban Road Catholic Parish, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The department just wanted to provide an update on this matter because it's been before you for a number of years. And most recently, in May of 2024, the commission was asked to grant an extension of the commencement of construction requirement in the zoning ordinance. That the commission supported that extension of the commencement of construction. Again, this is a telecommunication tower that's located at the St. Alban Road Parish. That extension that was granted would have gone through November of 2024, and we just wanted to provide you with an update that, as Ms. Humphrey and Mr. Rubus, I'm sure, is aware, is under construction. So they've met that requirement, and there's no further action needed by the commission, but we did want to give you an update on it, and we're not asking for any action tonight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newberry.
The tower arrived today.
And as with the chair's permission, as ironic as it seems, coming to work today, I filed the truck delivering the first 3 sections. And I knew exactly where it was going.
Okay, I know that we all want to go home. I'm hungry too, but I want to circle back to something I said earlier about the porches. I want to make it clear that I don't have a line in the sand drawn that says you have to have 15 feet. But like Mr. Vunich said, I think that there has to be, there's give and take. I'm okay if they add the porch to the front of the house and then have a little bit of a setback to get close to 15 feet back. But when I looked at the Liberty series for the homes that are supposed to go in there, they're flat fronts. There's no porch extending out. So they have nothing that comes to that 15 feet. And when we had the town center update meeting, when we had that group of people, one of the comments was that one of the reasons that the garages were to be set back was so that it looked like more of a walkable community where you look like you were walking past houses. You weren't walking past garages. So I'm not, my line of the sand isn't that the garage has to be back 15 feet so that they lose square footage of a house. My comment is that the garage should visibly be back from the front, whether that means we extend the porch or not. But consistency is what we have to go for. And we have, it seems to me that, and I could be very wrong. Don't tell my husband I said that, but because I'll deny it. But it just doesn't seem that that's been the consistency that's been applied. And I think that there's plenty of documentation that says that when the town center update committee met and people voted, that was what they wanted. So that's my only point that I was trying to make, is that we need to work towards getting what the people wanted, because we are the people. So thank you for my moment.
Can I say one thing to add to that? If you're having an issue with people being able to build under those, can you take it back to the commission that Ms. Helfrey's on so they can look at this and approve it?
Well,
Because
that commission's not existing. Probably come back to us.
That's correct.
okay, but it was voted, if whatever is voted on, I like to stay as consistent. It's not an ordinance, so you can do what you want apparently, but
Well, it is a component of the town center plan, which was adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission. For better or worse, we kind of do treat it as an ordinance. And we always call it out in the report if we're falling short of that 15-foot distance and try to provide an explanation of why. And the steps we think can offset that.
And I'll, Councilman Gross.
It seems like if they want your vote, they better come back with something that's close to what the town center in that spirit of what was approved. And I think that's.
And
I
just
mean, they heard.
And just to add some history, originally, I think we said no front garages at all.
Right.
But Windrush and Windsor Crest and whatever's in front of Manors at Cherry's Hills, those are, and there's a few in Main Street, but it came to, seems like those homes just didn't really sell.
There were issues with rear loaded garages and alleys that we hadn't anticipated because the application had been successful elsewhere in the region, but across the country. And for the most part, we've tried. I think the commission has done yeoman's work on it. It's a tough nut because, again, the alleys just weren't well received.
Now, that being said, living in one of those rear entry garage homes, I actually love it. And I think it's more secure than the front entry.
Well, and we've tried to address it in a litany of ways. One is we, as you know, with Mike Whalen Custom Homes, we've had side entry and those work very well. In towns of Windrush, we did rear entry, which I think worked very well. And in those instances, which we see the most of, we're doing the 7.5 to 15 feet, et cetera. Thank you.
I have one last thing, and I promise that's it. I promise. I called Travis earlier today. I sent him some pictures of a swale at the end of a street. And I asked him to print those for me. And the reason I did is because when we're looking at Eckerly Place, I took those pictures in the country. And I would like to know is that when Eckerly Place comes back in front of us, I would just like to know if that's what they're proposing for the streets. Because also West County News put an article out about our site development plan and used the terms proverbia. And we did not like proverbia when it came in front of us because they were talking about having sidewalks almost to the front doors of the homes. And on the street view, I went back and I watched the site plan meeting so that I was not making things up. it showed the street and then it showed 10 feet for the swale. And then it showed another 10 feet for street trees and sidewalks and easements. That's quite a bit into a yard. And so I just wanted to have that addressed for us when they come back in front of us. And that is why I asked Travis to print those pictures so that you could show what I was trying to understand.
Yeah, I remember on one of those plans having those sidewalks like cutting off half your front yard. And
Yes.
And it was houses not facing the street, facing them angular, which I don't believe that anybody liked. So.
And Commissioner Helfrey, although there'll be a more finished product in the reserve, you have shown what a grass swale looks like.
Well, then I have a concern about that because somewhere in the meeting that we had that I watched today on the past meeting, I believe they said, well, one of the problems with those things is people can shoot grass clippings into them, which causes them to clog. So now if they're in somebody's front yard where they're responsible for maintaining them and mowing them, do grass clippings really cause a problem? I mean, this is a big project that's going to be a major part of Main Street and of downtown. Hopefully we can get this over the finish line. And so I would just like to, before we approve all that, to have actual answers for people. And so I thought rather than me coming in behind and going, hey, could you answer? I could give it to you ahead of time and maybe they could answer my concern. Thank you. And I promise that's it. I'm done.
And just one last comment. Calvi Homes had an expectation that their site plan subcommittee recommendation would be here at tonight's meeting. And I explained to them the weekend that the stormwater concerns and several other items that were identified during that subcommittee meeting just didn't have time to get addressed. So we anticipate having them back at the November meeting and obviously the stormwater matter addressed as best as possible.
all right, motion to adjourn.
I'm not doing it.
Commissioner Clayton.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilman Brost. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, we're closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.